Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting here a couple minutes for everyone to get started here. So we'll probably start about 12:01 to make sure we've got everyone from the waiting room listening. And we're looking forward to a good lunch hour talk with you all. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle Dobbins, and I'm with the From the Land of Kansas program, and I'm the marketing manager here at the Kansas Department of Agriculture. KDA and K-State Research and Extension are excited that you have joined us today for the Farmers Market Direct-to-Consumer virtual workshops that are going to be happening all this week long. So we have a great week of activities planned for you. So today you'll be hearing from the Kansas ValueAdded Food Lab with Karen Blakesley to kind of kick off our today. And then after her presentation and Q&A, we're going to move on to food safety with Adam Inman. And he will be covering all the things about food safety for Kansas Department of Agriculture. Then Tuesday from noon to 1, you're going to be learning about sales tax and then how to package your products and how to care for your certified scales. Wednesday from noon to 1, we'll be hearing from Meat and Poultry about any regulation updates you need to know, and then the Kansas Value Added Meats Lab at K-State. On Thursday, you can learn about accepting SNAP and EBT and double up food bucks at your programs there at the farmers markets. And then Friday is our big day from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're going to have a keynote speaker, Brian Copham of the Colorado Department of Agriculture, talking about best practices for business success, including pricing, displays, consumer interaction, and hints. Also, we're going to have marketing tips and tricks of how to engage with your consumers online. Also have Emily with Vermont Law talking about how to identify common legal risks and best practices for managing them. We're going to have the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program presentation, which I know many of you will be looking forward to. And then also we're going to be having a special on vegetable production resources and a Q&A with lots of our experts from K-State Research and Extension on that. So thanks again for taking time out today to be part of this effort by participating online with us. We do have some participants from out of state. So just want to remind you that the information in these are very Kansas specific. So if you are selling products in another state, we encourage you to reach out to your local extension offices or to the Department of Agriculture in your state to just make sure you know all of the correct rules for that area. We do have the regular couple of housekeeping rules we always talk about when we're on Zoom. During the presentation portion, please make sure to keep your microphones muted so everyone can hear the speakers. If you have a question during the presentation, you can either submit your question in the chat box or you can raise your hand, and at the end of the presentation, we'll call on you and you can unmute and ask your question live. Questions are being monitored by the Kansas Department of Agriculture. And when you do ask your question, if you want to include your name and city and farmers market or business that you're representing, it might help us be able to answer the question better. And also this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted online so you can watch it later, and also specific presentations will be posted. So if you need to go back and check some specifics for something you might want to answer some questions on. Also, if you're selling pet treats or live plants, those are not going to be being presented live, but we do have handouts and videos already on the site. And you will see that in the chat box of where you can go check out all of those handouts and videos. Also, if you registered by January 18th and requested to receive copies of the regulations for farmers market or the food labeling or the sampling safely, you should already have those handouts in hand. If you registered after January 18th, those will be being mailed out later this week or early next week. And if you did not sign up and you do want some of those handouts, it'll be being dropped in the chat, the email address where you can email asking for those handouts, or also they are all posted online and there will be a link also in the chat box for all of that's being posted there if you just want to check them out online. So if there's, I'm going to turn it over to Londa Nwadike of K-State Research and Extension now, as she's going to take us into the next part of our presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Janelle. Can you, I guess you can hear me, Janelle, right? Okay, just want to make sure. Great. Well, thanks so much for all of you for joining today. We are so glad to have you all here. It's really fun to look at all the names and videos on some of you and see a lot of good friends that we've been doing this workshop with for the last, 8-9 years, I think it's been. We really miss doing it in person, but with the weather forecasted for this week, we're glad that we're doing it remotely. So then hopefully everybody can join more easily than having to drive and wonder if the weather's going to be okay and that sort of thing. But we're really glad that you all could be here, and K-State Research and Extension is excited to work with KDA as we have for the past few years on these workshops and provide information for all of you that'll be helpful in your business. So please be sure to ask questions if you have questions. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I guess I didn't really say I'm the state extension food safety specialist. And I work for both Kansas State University and the University of Missouri. And Susan's iPhone, did you have a question for us before we get started? I see you have your hand raised. Okay, well, we will go ahead, but if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat as well. So I'm going to launch a poll. That's one thing about not being together in person. We don't get to chat with each other as much, but we do have a poll so that we can kind of learn from you what you all are selling or interested in selling, what you're interested in learning about the regulations for. And then you can kind of get to know who's in the room a little bit. And so just to kind of have a sense of who's here today. Again, we really appreciate that all of you could join, and you can take a minute and fill out the poll. You should be able to select multiple, whatever the right word is, choices, I guess. So feel free to just fill that out so we can see who's selling what that's here today, which is helpful for our presenters. All right, great. And yes, you can type into the chat if it's not listed there. And oh, whoops, we don't have meat listed. So yes, meat could easily be something you're selling and not listed there. So yeah, so fill out the poll. And then if you want to write into the chat, you can as well. All right, great. So people are putting some stuff in the chat. That's great. I think we'll go ahead and end the poll. Great, we got a lot of stuff coming into the chat. So you can, so our speakers can go ahead and take a look at what's in the chat there. So hopefully you can see the results of the poll. So we have a lot of people selling produce, and I know a lot of you sell multiple things. So 73% of the people here today are selling produce at the market. 55% are selling baked goods. 48% selling canned foods. And then we got a bunch of other things and a lot of great things going into the chat. So really appreciate that everybody's sharing what you're selling. Let me see. So the first, so I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry, I'm not super tech savvy. So the first presentation that we're going to have today is from Karen, my colleague Karen Blakesley, here at K-State Research and Extension, and she is the Assistant Director of the Kansas ValueAdded Foods Lab. So we're now going to have a presentation from Karen. Thank you.
Greetings from the Kansas ValueAdded Foods Lab. I am Karen Blakesley. Dr. Kelly Getty and I are co-directors of the lab. I manage the nutrition labeling program and the day-to-day operations. Dr. Getty is our process authority. We have 5 undergraduate students who work in the lab and gain valuable food science experience along with customer service to help you. Nate and Abby are co-managers along with Emma, Liz, and Emma. We are located on the Manhattan campus within the Department of Animal Sciences Industry in Call Hall, which houses the core faculty for the Food Science Institute. We partner with the Kansas Department of Agriculture from the Land of Kansas program. They support the Kansas ValueAdded Foods Lab by providing funding, which helps reduce the costs to you. The Kansas Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Lodging Division also supports us with regulatory expertise. From the Land of Kansas members receive a 30% discount off of our services. We work with small farmers market vendors to established companies, and all the work that we do is confidential. The Kansas ValueAdded Foods Lab provides services for food products regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. We do not work with low-acid canned foods. We also provide help for small meat processors and USDA regulatory support through Dr. Liz Boyle, one of our extension meat specialists. While many small businesses do not need nutrition facts labels, it is a good idea to provide information to consumers about your products. We use a labeling software to generate these labels from your recipes that complies with FDA regulations. Dr. Getty is our process authority. She can help verify that the processing of your products is safe and that it complies with FDA regulations. She can provide process authority letters, which for some products are required to file with the FDA. We can test your products for pH, which is the acid content, water activity, sodium content, percent Brix, which is sugar content, moisture content. We can do basic microbial evaluation, shelf life evaluation, and other tests by request, or if needed, such as basic sensory analysis. Attention to detail is critical for an efficient turnaround. In particular, for nutrition labels, brand names of ingredients, sub-ingredients, providing nutrition profiles of ingredients from suppliers is better than just a picture of a nutrition facts panel on that ingredient package. While our software program contains thousands of ingredients, you may have an ingredient that is unique. Therefore, we ask for as much detail as possible to make the most accurate label. Please weigh these ingredients. So a scale is really important. It should read to at least 2, if not 3 decimal places. Weight is more accurate than using household measurements. We can create nutrition labels in different formats to fit your package label. Options include vertical, dual column, tabular, and linear. Along with the label, we generate an ingredient statement and can list any food allergens associated with your recipe that are required by the FDA. We ask for a detailed step-by-step description of how you make your product. Get a thermometer and a timer. Just saying bring to a boil or reduce to a simmer is not acceptable. We need to have specific temperatures and times. This is a requirement for filing with the FDA. Examples are given here for your reference, such as greater than or equal to 185 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 minutes. That is more specific. Be sure the thermometer that you have can be calibrated for accuracy. Give a complete description of your container and lid, such as an 8-ounce glass jar with a metal 2-piece lid. The headspace measurement is important for how the jar pulls a vacuum and seals. This is the space between the top of the food or liquid and the underside of the lid. This must be specified, such as 1/4 to 1/2 inch or a target of 1 inch. Please contact us if you have any questions about this. Our direct to consumers publication has just been updated for 2022. I encourage you to read through this extensive publication to learn what products need a Kansas Department of Agriculture license, if you can make it at home, or if you need to make the product in a separate licensed facility. There is also a list of key contacts to find out more information. This publication is produced jointly by K-State Research and Extension and the Kansas Department of Agriculture. We are working to provide you more education materials and trainings. We, along with the University of Wisconsin and the University of Missouri, have applied for a USDA grant to develop novel food safety training for small food businesses that make acid or acidified foods sold direct to consumers. Some ideas include how to make a safe product formulation and record keeping for success. We hope to expand upon the University of Wisconsin's current training and make it more user-friendly for you. Wish us luck as we wait word on this funding. I encourage you to sign up for the K-State Research and Extension First Friday e-calls to help you as entrepreneurs build your business and support your community. The website is below, or go to the main K-State Research and Extension homepage, click on Community, then Entrepreneurship. You can listen to past webinars as there is an extensive list of presentations. While making the food product is the main goal of your operation, getting your business set up first is equally as important. We ask that you contact us before sending us any products. In most cases, we require payment prior to any work done, and we will hold that payment until all work is completed. One of these 5 food science students will be happy to visit with you. We are open 5 days a week, most of the year, including the summer, but closed on holidays. Again, contact us for help. Our bottom line is food safety, and we are here to help you make safe food products for all consumers. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. And thanks for playing that. Do we have any questions for Karen? You can either type them into the chat or you can unmute yourself. Go ahead, Dana.
Great. Actually, we had one, Londa, come in on the chat for Karen. And it talked about the testing requirements for flour jellies. Would you have some information on flour jellies with that? Or Londa, if you want to pop in and provide any of that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had a couple requests here in the last year or two to make like dandelion jelly or from some other kind of flours. It really depends on the acidity because dandelions, for example, could be low acid. So it really depends on that and the formulation that you're using. So that's where getting your product tested for the acid content would be really, really important for something like that. Londa, you had, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I just happened to have gotten my publication, and of course I have the blurred screen, so sorry, I can't see that, but the publication just came to my office, in fact, and yeah, so on page 6 of that publication that we've been putting in the chat is listed flour jelly. So that's in the table of needs a test to determine if it needs a license or not, because like Karen said, it's one that, you know, unfortunately it's not a one size fits all. We have to make sure that it fits to the specific type of flour jelly that you're making. So yes. Yeah, so if you haven't gotten your publication yet, you will hopefully in a few weeks, but if you already have, it's on page 6. Thanks.
Well, great. Another question came up in the chat, Karen, and you can answer this one about the cost of testing.
Yeah, I just saw that one too. So we have some options. One of them is called basic product testing, and this includes getting the pH, the water activity, the sodium content, We can create the nutrition label, and if you need a process authority letter, that is $150 for that package. If you're a member of the From the Land of Kansas program, you would get 30% off of that, so that would reduce it down to $105. Separate tests on their own, such as getting a pH test or even a water activity test, those are $15 each. So it is much reduced. I will say that if you were to take your products to a commercial laboratory, you would be paying a lot more money. So we're here to help you all and reduce your costs also.
Great. There's 2 more questions in the chat that we'll take care of, and then we'll roll into Adam's presentation with it about labeling for items that don't require a license. Mm-hmm. Something, the example was given of nut butter.
Yeah, the basic things that you really should put on your label are, of course, the name of your product, the quantity that's in that package, your contact information. Let's see, let me think here. Your business name. And an ingredient statement and you need to list your ingredients from most to least. So those are the basic things. I would also include any kind of food allergies. Somebody put in the example like nut butter. I would definitely list that too. So people are very clear about understanding what kind of nuts you're using in that. Those are the basic things that are needed for a label on your products.
Got it. Something came up, Karen, in your conversation with it that is new to me as well from going through these presentations over the years. What is the process authority letter?
Okay.
And
the process, yeah.
And what do folks need to do with that?
Right. A process authority letter is where Dr. Getty would look at your ingredient list and how you make your product. And for example, this is primarily for things something like a salsa or even a barbecue sauce. We need to make sure that you're heating that product correctly, or that it's within the parameters that you can safely make it, or otherwise it might have to be refrigerated. So that process authority letter is used to comply with the FDA regulations. Adam can probably fill you in a little bit more on this too, but we will give you the step-by-step instructions on how to fill in the document that the FDA requires. You can do this online, and we'll tell you exactly what you need to put in to that form.
Got it. One last thing, which will be a good transition to Adam's presentation. Regarding testing, is it required only once for each product, or is that something that needs to be done more than once over the years?
Basically once, but if you change any of your ingredients or any of your packaging, you really need to contact us and let us know what changes you're making so we can make a new letter for you and that you stay up to date.
Well, great. With that, I'll throw it back to the team to introduce Adam.
Great. Thanks very much, Dana and Karen. And thanks for all the great questions. This is exactly why we have these workshops, is for you guys to have a chance to ask questions. So, and if you have more questions afterwards, I'm sure Karen would be happy to answer them. And I can help answer questions as well. But we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam. And I know Adam's been reading all that's going on in the chat. And, so I'm sure he probably has some good insight on a lot of these questions as well. But so Adam Inman is with the KDA Food Safety and Lodging program. And Adam has been our go-to person for these workshops for, again, the past 8 years, or how many ever years it's been. So we really appreciate Adam's time and sharing today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Adam. Thanks very much, Adam.
Thanks, Londa. I appreciate everyone taking the time to visit today about these food product questions and safety. So one thing, when you test your slides and then you forget to go back to the beginning, because obviously everyone is most interested in the introductory slide, I'm sure. But yeah, we'll talk about some Q&A. I wanted to really make sure we had space today for the questions that come up, recognizing that you look at the list from the poll and how diverse everyone's products are, and just they're literally as many different products as have come up already. Those are going to have different answers because they are so different. So we'll talk through as many of those as we can, and would love to continue the conversation for anything that we can't get to during our time together today. But I think the first question to answer is, of course, why are there food safety requirements? And so these estimates are a little bit older. Like many things, it was delayed by COVID. So I think those hopefully the estimates are going to be updated. But bottom line, a lot of people do get sick each year, about 1 in 6. Last I saw, we had about 80 folks on here, so you can do the math. And probably 10 or so of us would be expecting to get sick this year from foodborne illness. And that has terrible, terrible effects and trickles down to cost the economy. But real people are the victims of foodborne illness, and that's important to keep in mind. Most foodborne illnesses do resolve themselves without further complications, but we just don't know when it's going to go to a next level. And so a few stories have been shared by victims' families. You can read more of these at Stop Foodborne Illness if you'd be interested. But I think we all agree that food safety is important, just from a basic standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. One example of a product that went wrong was some potatoes that were home canned and then used in a potato salad for a church potluck. And so a lot of foodborne illnesses go unreported, as you see from the estimates versus the numbers of cases that we're actually able to link to the cause definitively. Typically, when more people get sick, you're more likely to identify those to start with and then find where they originated. So in this case, 25 people did go to the hospital, all 25 who were identified as cases, and resulted in 1 death at last check, and that was in 2015. So product safety is critical. Everyone would agree on that. And with KDA's purpose to serve, promote, and grow the state's largest industry of agriculture, we recognize that it's our responsibility to take an effective compliance approach for these food safety regulations to help businesses be successful while we're protecting the public. And so dialogue, a big part of today, big part of what we do is dialogue, and today is an example of that. And we're looking at everyone's systems and wanting to see that folks have an understanding of the business. The ValueAdded Foods Lab has tremendous opportunities to give you business information that you need to be successful, and other labs are available as well. But getting that system in place so that you can confidently produce safe food repeatably. So I'll start up. We have a sense of it with the various products, again, that we're just from participants today that we're talking about. But I think potato salad is one that's pretty accessible to folks. And I think it's a good thought experiment for just a variety of factors that can weigh in on food safety. So we asked the question, what component or what part of potato salad requires refrigeration for safety? And when I first started giving these presentations many years ago, and I used this question, a lot of people knew what went into potato salad, but apparently as we go along through time, some people have forgotten. And I'm sure you all are well versed in this, but we'll go through a couple of the key components. And usually when we ask this question, most people agree that when you put eggs in your potato salad or boiled eggs, that those require temperature control for safety. So that's pretty straightforward. Some people put celery in, and this is a good example for the vegetables. If you just put the celery in without heat treating it first, it doesn't require temperature control for safety. You're going to have competing microorganisms that are going to spoil that celery. But if you did heat treat it, you could kill those off, and then that celery would require temperature control for safety because you've killed off competitive organisms and you have freed up some nutrients by changing the physical state of the celery. Potatoes, if we all think back to high school biology class, once they're heat treated, a great source, just like people love potatoes that are cooked, bacteria love potatoes that are cooked. So that's great, requires temperature control for safety. And then mayo, often found in potato salad, does not require temperature control for safety typically. And this is usually the one that really opens people's minds to the importance of chemistry and food safety. And the specific part of mayonnaise that makes refrigeration not the key control for safety is the acidity. And Karen talked about how the lab will measure that acidity, and that's an important factor. So even though if you used a homemade recipe and used raw eggs, like a traditional mayonnaise, but you followed adding the acids that are in there, the vinegar and lemon juice, you're going to render that to where any bacteria that were present would not grow. And so refrigerating that product doesn't make it safer. So we see mayonnaise being refrigerated historically for primarily quality purposes. So this just is an example that's pretty accessible to why it's so important to know about your products and the different formulations that they may have. Now, because we're trying to be fair, we do see that it adds complexity. Simple rules are often unfair. So the more fair we try to be, the more complex it tends to get. And then on top of that, we also have interactions with the Division of Food Safety Responsibilities at the federal level. And so that introduces some more complexity. So here's kind of a simplified flow chart, and this covers a lot of the different products that we see as far as which regulatory agency regulates a particular product in Kansas. And so you can walk through that, and I'll leave this slide up as we open it up and come to a close for questions. But the key point that I want to bring out, we haven't had any changes to our laws here recently. So the change, what may feel like change, and while we're continuing to update that food safety guide, which I'll put that link up again in the chat, Dana, if you'd be able to do that, just to make sure it's accessible. And why that is so complicated, why it keeps being updated, is because of all the different product formulations, and it stems from the innovation that we're seeing in the industry at all levels. And so folks are getting really creative and all kinds of creativity. And so we're trying to, as questions come in on different products and different formulations of products, how does that impact the food safety aspects? And that's where the updates are coming up. So continue to answer those inquiries for innovative products and doing the best we can to keep up with those, and good partnership, as Karen mentioned, with the ValueAdded Foods Lab to try to give all the operators and producers the information that you need for successful, safe products that you're putting in the marketplace. With that, I'll open it up and see, again, that direct-to-consumer guide, such a valuable resource for starters in finding your product in there. But if it's kind of overwhelming, feel free to give us a call, email us, and we'll talk through the specific examples as they come up. We do that all the time. So Dana, I'll open it up and see if there's any questions that you've had come in.
There are some questions, Adam. So the first one that came in asked about, does freeze drying require a license?
Okay, yeah. So if you follow the social media, you've probably seen the freeze drying has become very popular. And just with any of our food products, the question is, what are you freeze drying? So a lot of our products, what you start with, it sets where it ends up in that category of license or not. And so we've gotten inquiries from everything from a nougat candy bar that's commercially prepared, and that would not require temperature control for safety. And freeze drying then wouldn't change that. So that's still safe, could be done direct to consumer without a license. But then as folks get more creative, we're getting inquiries on vegetables, just about anything that you have in your cupboard or your refrigerator. Let's freeze dry it and see what comes out. So if you keep it in your refrigerator to start with, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to require a license. We want to make sure that process is evaluated appropriately for safety. Now, there could be some that when we go through the process, we can work with the ValueAdded Foods Lab, and it turns out that, yeah, we're confident that ends up, and it's not a specialized process, but we just have to go through the process with all these different types of products and processes to see where they end up. And it gets a little, it takes a lot of energy, but we take that on and get the information that you guys need to be able to say definitively where your products fall. And that helps protect your interests as well as providing a safe product.
Got it. And this is an open time for our participants to go ahead and put their question in the chat so we can get that to Adam and others that are experts on the call today. But Adam, I have another one that has come in, and it's about cheese. Is cheese required to be kept cold for safety?
Yeah, so the cheese is a real common product, of course, and it is one of those ones that dances right on that line where the majority of cheeses, on first glance, they're grouped into the category that requires temperature control for safety. But there's a possibility for you to get more information about a particular cheese formulation, and it may end up in that other category of does not require temperature control for safety once it's produced. The production of the cheese maybe has a few different regulatory considerations, but for the finished products, depending on how it's handled, how it's packaged, it may end up in that category. So if it's something that you don't want to have that as a refrigeration as a requirement for safety, but you're willing to invest in getting that information, then that may be useful for you. So we can help connect you with that information, possibly depending on the type of cheese. So yeah, typically going to require refrigeration for safety unless we get additional information.
Got it. I want to go back when we talked a little bit about freeze drying. We've had a couple other comments come in on that same line about dehydrating and what's required there, and also air drying of herbs.
Yeah, so heat treated vegetable matter, again, releases those nutrients that could be available to bacteria that would make people sick. So if you're heat treating as part of your process, then that could change the answer. We'll need to probably take a closer look, but just drying herbs without heat treating them does not fall into that category of temperature control for safety. Dehydrating, again, depends on the type of product. Just like freeze drying, folks are freeze drying a lot of things. Folks are experimenting with a lot of dehydration of different items. So cut fruit that doesn't require refrigeration for safety to start with, strawberries, for example, would not require a license to dehydrate for the direct-to-consumer sales. Now, of course, all of these products, if you're doing a wholesale transaction, so you're selling them to a restaurant or to a grocery store or to a market for someone else to sell, then that does trigger the food processing license that we would have to work through with you on that. But for the direct-to-consumer sales, which is kind of the main point of conversation today, those depends on the product that you're doing.
Great. Karen, I want to loop you into the conversation right now. We had a question come in regarding farmers markets liabilities, and if there are any certificates or letters that the Value Added Food Lab would be able to provide, or do they provide?
Well, aside from the process authority letters, we do provide a product evaluation letter to say this is the pH of your product, this is the water activity of the product that we tested at that point in time. It's up to you to consistently make that product as best to your ability. And so those letters could be used. I don't know much about the insurance side of things as far as the farmers markets are concerned, but those letters could possibly come in handy from us.
All right.
I don't know, Londa, do you have anything else on that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I know that we do get, I know that people have asked me before, have said, I want the certificate from the produce safety training that I took because I want to send it to my insurance agent. So I know that people do that. So for some, at least for some trainings that we do provide a certificate. I know that people do use that. We can, as K-State Extension, we can provide you, with documentation like Karen talked about. I mean, you can say this product had this pH and whatever, but what you do with it, I guess we can't really say, but I do know that people do use that sort of thing for insurance purposes, but I'm not an insurance agent either. So.
Right. And the other thing too, depending on what you're wanting to make, you may need to take an Acidified Foods processing training, which is a online training service that many universities offer. That's one of the things that I mentioned in my video that we're trying to hopefully get some funding for, to put that kind of training together, and then you could have a certificate out of that. Whether or not that plays any weight in the insurance decision, like Londa and I said, we're not insurance people. So, but that is something that you could have in your back pocket to say, hey, I went to this school and I learned how to do this or whatever. So that could be another thing.
If I could jump in.
Go ahead, Adam.
Another use that we see fairly often for the product evaluation letters is when one vendor complains about another vendor that how come they're not licensed, and you have that information about your business that establishes that you're within that exemption, and you've done your due diligence to get that information, and you're making that product, and it does fall in that exemption. So that can help if your customer has questions, or if another vendor or market manager has questions, you can show that you've gone through the steps and you know about your product, and that you're able to take advantage of that license exemption.
Great. We're going to just kind of follow along on a theme here with market managers. Adam, Karen, Londa, Janelle on this piece. Are farmers market managers required to make sure that their vendors are following all these regulations, or is it up to the vendors to stay up to date on all of that licensing?
I'll answer that one. So it depends on your farmer's market and if you have rules written where the farmer's market might be happening, et cetera. So an example would be is if it is a city-sponsored farmer's market, and so you're running through the city's insurance, they might say something in the insurance call out that all vendors need to provide certification that they have extra insurance. Or also if you just have rules written, lots of our farmers markets, even if they are smaller ones, have an annual meeting, and they have an easy set of rules that they write out for all of the farmers market for them to sign as a vendor before they have the first market. And that may say something like, as a vendor, you are responsible for making sure all of the food safety rules are followed. You promise to be here every week, or let us know 3 days in advance, or whatever your set rules are there, because there is not an overarching set rule market by market. That is set by every single market, decides if a farmer's market manager is in charge of it, or if it's a vendor by vendor specific. And hopefully if that doesn't answer questions, just put them more in the chat or raise your hand and we'll try to answer those. And we will have some more information on Friday when we also have someone talking about the legal liabilities of farmers markets.
Great. There was a question in the chat and Karen has already answered that, but it talked about acidified training with it, and currently K-State Research and Extension, and Londa's going to pop in right now. And go, Londa.
I was actually putting my hand up to my ear because I couldn't hear your volume went way down, Dana. So I wasn't raising my hand, but yeah, Karen answered the question. Yeah, like Karen said, Kansas currently doesn't offer acidified foods training, but there's a number of, and I didn't look at the link Karen put in, but there's a number of options that you can take online. I think Missouri is planning to offer acidified foods training. I'm trying to remember, I just had an email about it last week. They quite often offer it in person in Columbia, Missouri, but I think they're still planning it. Maybe it'll be this summer if they do offer it in person. But right now the best option is to take, if you need that better process control school acidified foods training, and that's just for if you're selling salsa or pickles, those sort of products, and some salsas, I should say, and pickles, then you need that acidified foods better process control school training. And the best option right now is to do it online, because that's, yeah, we don't offer it specifically in Kansas.
One, I want to stay with you. With it, a question showed up a little bit earlier in the chat about water testing with it, and specifically it was Southwest Kansas, the cost of water testing, and then making sure that it is shipped and received in a timely manner to meet qualifications on it. Could you elaborate just a little bit on that for us, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in fact, I chatted with the person that asked that question in the chat, but but thank you for calling on me, Dana, so I could bring it up to everybody. So, so yeah, for produce safety. So this is for if you're growing produce, if you are raising produce to sell, we do offer free water testing for Kansas produce growers. So that would be water that's used pre-harvest, for irrigation and so on, as well as water that's used post-harvest. So if you're rinsing your produce afterwards, or even washing your hands, to use with your produce, we do have grant funding that can pay for that water testing. If you are, and we understand the situation with the labs and so on, unfortunately, right now the only labs that we have are in Olathe and Manhattan, but you can just feel free to send me an email. I can put it in the chat, but you can email me and I can connect you with the person that can provide you with, we can pay for shipping. I'll just say that more briefly. But so if you, and and we can't pay for shipping like a lot because we don't want to use all our grant funds to pay for shipping, but we can pay for shipping. So just send me an email and we can get a prepaid shipping, whatever the right word is, container to you to be able to provide that for free. So that's open to any produce growers in Kansas and Missouri that are interested in getting their produce tested, or sorry, their water tested. And I'll go ahead. I saw the question about soil. I can just bring that up to you right away. So K-State Research and Extension does provide soil testing. That's through our, and I don't remember the exact name, it's through our soils testing lab. I'll just say, it's an agronomy or something. They provide they provide soil testing. So most local county extension offices have the kits, there for you to get your soil tested. I bet Rebecca McMahon and our colleagues on Friday will talk more about that on Friday, our vegetable production people. I don't know the specifics, but we do provide soil testing too, but just not me specifically.
Got it. Great. That was a good call on that. We had a question come in and it's already been answered, but I want to bring it forward in case some folks are on their phone. And it asked about a publication that covers what you need to warn about with possible cross-contamination with peanuts. And Karen Blakesley added a link to an FDA update on that. And so it's through their FDA consumer updates and food allergies on labeling. So if you go ahead and put those keywords in, you can find that publication if you're listening versus following along on the chat. But again, it is an FDA publication with that. Any of our experts that are on can handle this one, or some of the folks that are participating that are on the team with that. It talks about what contaminants might be in water that you test for.
Yeah, good question. I should have clarified that better. So thanks for asking. So we can only provide microbial testing. So we only have the capability, and that's what our grant is for microbial testing. So, and we only look for generic E. coli and then coliforms, which is an indicator if there might be pathogens present. So that's what we have. That's what our free testing is for. Again, that soils lab that I mentioned earlier that I don't remember all the details on, but they, within K-State Agronomy, they do provide water testing. Like they can test the water like nitrates and lead and those sort of things. Like they can test for the more chemical aspects of water quality, but our free testing from our lab just provides microbial testing.
Great. And that soil testing lab is through the Department of Agronomy, and you can go through their webpage and find that information under their services tab. Adam,
I put that in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
And just a little note, I noticed the K-State websites are doing some weird things this morning, so be patient with them. They're just not quite loading correctly, but the website addresses are correct.
Great. Adam, I want to roll back to you for just a few minutes. We've done a lot of these farmers market workshops in the past, and there's been lots of great dialogue. You covered just a few bits and pieces in your slide presentation today. From your past experience and knowing lots of questions usually come in, what are a few more things that you can elaborate on for us as far as farmers market workshops and selling? Because I know you guys will get questions through the entire season. So you touched on just a few, but maybe highlight a couple of those questions that you didn't cover that you historically heard at our presentations.
I think some common ones for the folks doing honey, we get questions on that, and there's some exemptions, particularly the direct-to-consumer exemption. We tend to get a lot of questions about produce in general, and if you're not doing harvesting or processing beyond the harvest cut and potable water rinse, then we don't have any direct requirements. We encourage everyone to follow the good agricultural practices, including waters that are used for irrigation and processing, and for pesticide use, including pre-harvest intervals, those kinds of things. Just the key point is really just let us know if you feel like you're not able to get in the farmers market guide or or from the website. We understand it's because it's so complicated. There's so many different variables that ask us about your product. We'll talk with you about, talk you through that process. A couple of things I did want to call out too on the water testing, because there's the produce safety water testing kind of world. And then there's also just general water use for food uses like food establishments and food processing plants. And it's just, we do have a basic requirement for that E. coli, like Londa talked about, and coliforms, as well as nitrates. Those are two of the most common contaminants that we see in well water. And that's where the water testing really comes from, or surface water for irrigation. But if you're on a rural water system or public water supply, they're taking care of that testing for you. As long as your in-facility system is in good shape, then that's not a particular concern. So just for this, if you're using a private water supply, a private well, that we have the additional safety checks that we want to go through at least annually to make sure that the water is in good shape there.
Great. And your team of inspectors are very approachable with it. So if we can't answer it, just a phone call that your team is out in the field across the state, we can sure have folks do face-to-face conversations with that. So excited about the great team that you guys had. A question was placed in the chat about expiration dates on yogurt and fresh cheese, and Karen went ahead and stated that there are shelf life studies that can be done and listed the phone number and the email for the Value Added Foods Lab, which we've posted previously in the chat with that. Another question, I'm going to bounce right back to you, Londa, on this one. Is there an annual certification requirement for well water and or Adam, whichever wants to have this one?
Well, I can respond on the produce side, and then Adam can respond on the processed food side, because I'm not as familiar with that. But so for produce growers, it's complicated because there's a proposed rule revision to the water testing. So if you're interested in more specifics on for produce growers on water testing, either email me or join one of our produce safety trainings that we have. Because we talk about that at length. So generally speaking, it's a really good idea to test your water at least once a year if it's well water on for produce growers. And we provide free testing right now, so it's a great time to do it. But like I said, that's for pre-harvest use. For post-harvest use, it's not currently enforced, but it's, eventually it will be. And so, it's a good idea to do that testing. And yeah, I'll let, for who tests water, if it's for produce growers, I have grant funding that'll pay for produce growers. I don't have grant funding to pay for other water testing, but for produce growers, K-State can provide that. And Karen put in the chat the link to our produce safety website. So, and you can also go to a private lab, but you'll have to pay for it. So we can provide it for free. If you want nitrate testing, things like that, that's our agronomy lab. We'll do that. I'll let Adam talk about the processed food sides, how often they need to test their water.
Yeah, we set that annual baseline again, and I've been trying to dig it up here while we're visiting. The KDHE does have a list of accredited laboratories for that purpose, for the water testing for those private wells. And so as soon as I track that down, I'll get that popped into the chat there. So you can just try to find one and call around and look for a couple. There are some health departments that in the past have done it. Obviously with COVID, that's really stretched resources thin, so it may not be available. In the past, there have been some that we've accepted that they can do that E. coli, generic coliform and nitrate testing. So that it's been acceptable for us in the past as well. So we'll try to track down that lab listing. It's a search, and then get that out either in the chat here or later on with the resources.
Great. Things are kind of winding down here on the chat. Janelle, I want to throw one to you as our participants are thinking of any last minute things for the team that's on today. The question came up about selling wine at farmers markets and who addresses if a local farmers market is able to sell wine at their market.
Adam, you can chime in too, but usually that we first, because it depends on how they're trying to sell it. If they're selling it by the bottle, if they're wanting to sell it by the glass, et cetera. And we would usually give them the contact for Alcohol, Beverage, and Control, ABC, to just verify to make sure, but depending on how they're selling it, sometimes then it will come back to us and to food safety if ABC says it's not part of their coverage.
Got it. Sounds great. I think it was kind of on the bottle was the kind of gist that it came in. So
And
we're
pretty
good
much we
there.
always check with Alcohol, Beverage, and Control because those rules change, as we all know, all the time sometimes. And so we all want to always make sure we're giving them the best information. And so as you put in the chat box, which was great, is the From the Land of Kansas email address throughout the year, throughout this week, as people have questions, comments, trying to figure out the correct person to contact on questions. We are happy to always connect anyone and help get those answers to any questions they have, be they wine questions, food safety, water testing, et cetera.
Great. We had some questions come in on the chat about regulations on eggs and homebrewed kombucha, and those are covered in that publication through K-State Research and Extension, MF 3138. And so you can go there and find those answers to your questions. With that, if not, after you do some research, let us know if you have additional questions. Adam, a follow-up came on air drying herbs. Does drying with a dehydrator require testing, or is that considered air drying? Or Karen, or Londa?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look back in the guide to get the definitive answer on that one. Frankly, I don't have that one memorized where we classified that. So apologize for not having that off the top of my head.
If the person who asked it can drop their email address into the chat, we can also email you more specific information.
Yeah, off the top of my head, this air drying herbs does not require any testing for sure and would not require licensing, but I'm going to defer to Adam. But because if it's heated, if it's air drying, then you're not heating it. So I think it would not require not require a license. But again, I'll defer to Adam and defer to our publication. Sorry, I got it right here. But yeah.
Great. Jenny, thank you very much for chiming in on the chat. She states that she's with the Lenexa Farmers Market and they have wine and alcohol by the glass that is sold there. And so if you have any questions, you can reach her. And Jenny, I'm going to give your email out here since you posted in there, jdoty@lenexa.com. So thank you guys for helping each other out with it. You guys are great resources along the way. So appreciate all of that. I think we're wrapped up for time. Janelle, I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to you for wrap up.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dana. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And Adam, Londa, Karen, everyone answering questions. We always appreciate it greatly. As a reminder, if you are a From the Land of Kansas member, you may be able to get discounts from the Kansas ValueAdded Foods Lab, which is Karen Blakesley, or from the Kansas ValueAdded Meats Lab that you'll be hearing from on Wednesday. So if you have any questions on that, you can always reach out to myself or Sammy Gleason, who's our marketing coordinator with From the Land of Kansas. And we can be reached at that fromthelandofkansas@ks.gov email address. Also, any of you farmers market managers out there, it is time to be renewing, and also from the Land of Kansas members, it is renewal time. So make sure you're getting that 2022 renewal in. But all of you, thanks for joining us today. At the conclusion of the webinar series on Friday, we will be sending out an email with a link to an evaluation survey. I know lots of people don't love surveys, but the more you tell us on those, the better idea we have for next year of what to be telling you about, or maybe even doing a webinar series throughout the year. So we would appreciate you fill those out. It definitely helps us in our future planning. And also a reminder, you will get an email with a link to all the recordings so you can watch them later. And funding for this series was made possible from the Kansas Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Alternative Crops and the Kansas Sustainable Agricultural Research and Education Program, K-State Research and Extension, and the Kansas Department of Agriculture. So we hope to see all of you tomorrow or later this week for some of the other segments. They're noon to 1 every day other than Friday, and we start at 8:30 a.m. that day and also end at 1 p.m. on Friday. So if you have any questions, you can always give us a call at 785-564-6759. Once again, 785-564-6759. Otherwise, we hope to see you tomorrow, later in the week, or if we don't see you again, happy selling throughout the farmers market season and direct to consumer, and we will see you all later. Thanks.